welcome back to our discussion about workplace bullying. Dr. Lisa Barrow is with me. You heard about this wrongful dismissal case just before the break, and unfortunately you were telling me during the break that this is happening and it's something that's ongoing. But my biggest concern here is we're living in harsh economic times, so does this put victims and even potential victims more in a very negative position of putting up with a bully in some cases for fear of losing their job and having to be left out in the cold in such an economy?
Yes, definitely. With the economy the way that it is, people are not, well, they haven't been overly open about bullying to begin with. They're not going to want to put themselves in a situation where the bully, especially if the bully is his or her boss, in a situation where the person can be fired or terminated because the organization is downsizing.
Okay.
You know, and so a lot of individuals do end up losing their jobs, and it's couched under, well, downsizing or restructuring, what have you. And so this is why it's important for laws to be passed to protect employees from bullies in the workplace, so that employees know that they have some recourse.
Now this is leading up to something very important that we're going to be discussing very shortly, and that is, though, if you live in Ontario, because Bill 168, and you pointed this out to me, Lisa, Bill 168 is actually it's being discussed right now, and you're actually giving a presentation about it, or have you done so already?
My plan is to give
a presentation
next week.
It's open to public hearings, so next week.
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to be telling you more about this bill shortly, but first let's go to Romeo on line 5. Hello, Romeo, you're on the line.
Christine, I have noticed over the years that people have been coming up with complicated answers to simple questions, to simple problems.
Okay, go ahead, Romeo.
What you need to do, you approach the manager or the supervisor not as an enemy, but in a friendly way, and to say that, sir, or whoever, I've been uncomfortable with the way that you've been treating me. Maybe that's my imagination. But I would like to know what it is so we can, you know, get along better, because I know in my mind, I can feel it, you're really a nice person. And if there's any way I'm offending you, please let me know.
Romeo, I'm glad you called in with that, okay? The polite approach can go a long way, and I have heard it in the past that when you confront the bully in a polite way, sometimes it goes away, but not always, Romeo, and I'll give you a quick story before we go back to Lisa about this. Years and years ago, now we're looking at a lot of years ago, at least maybe 18 years ago, and this happened at Concordia University. My uncle was shot at Concordia. He happened to be in the wrong department, visiting the dean at the time, wrong place at the wrong time. But this man, Fabricant, who's still in jail, he was actually one of the biggest bullies. He was upset as to how he said the university was treating him. So what he did is that he kept on threatening co-workers, he was threatening the dean, and one day he snapped and he just started shooting people like crazy. My uncle wasn't even working in that particular department. He was a civil engineer, another type of an engineer. But this is just a case of how workplace violence and bullying can get. We weren't dealing with a person here who would deal with reason, who would listen to reason. This was a person that was terrorizing that community for a long time, and unfortunately that's sometimes the case, Lisa. This Sam, for example, and I'm not remotely comparing Sam in Lisa's book to Fabricant, but this man snapped and he just held you like a serpent and just wrapped his arm around you and shook you basically because he happened to lose control of himself at that time. There are people with a temper, people who snap, people who get violent and terrorize people. And if you can just give us a couple of comments about that, what do you do about this kind of a bully?
Well, first of all, approaching a person
politely is the way to go, is the number one way to go.
It's the right way to do it. You know, you want to talk to the person because maybe there's a misunderstanding. I'm a firm believer you give people the benefit of the doubt. But if you notice that the behavior continues, then obviously you may want to begin to document the situation, talk to human resources, talk to the person's boss. But we can't predict how people will respond. And unfortunately, what happens with bullies, if you can approach them in a polite manner, But to them, that's a sign of weakness. And so the very thing that you bring up
Wow.
is the very thing that they begin to torture you with, even more so.
And again, what we're highlighting here are the
Yes.
various types of personalities. Not everybody will go to the extreme, like that crazy man at Concordia, or even that we saw, that we do see in many institutions. Not people, most people won't do that, but what you're identifying here is there's some people that you go to them politely, and that's the way to go first.
Yes.
And there are others that will take that and use that against you.
Yes.
So my next question is, what does a person do when they're a victim of bullying, whether it be sudden violence, whether it be something insidious like what you experienced? What's the step-by-step process, Lisa?
What the person needs to do is first of all, document.
Start writing down.
Write down when, where, who said what.
Who, what, when, where, why, and how.
What color
Yes.
pants the person was wearing, whatever. Get all that detail down.
Dates, times, events.
Who was in the room, what were you doing. Try to write down as much information as possible.
Now, what are you doing at
And
this point, Lisa? Are you building a potential case for yourself?
what you're doing is you're building a case for yourself,
Okay.
and also it's a way of taking control of the situation, becoming proactive. Targeted individuals, by the time they get to this point, are feeling pretty helpless. So you need to take control of the situation. You need to understand that you are a valuable person and there are things that you can do. So you document. Then you reach out to individuals. You talk to the person. If you are fearful of that individual, then you ask for a colleague or a supervisor, someone to come along with you and have a discussion, because it needs to be discussed. Then you talk to the human resource department. You let them know what's going on. The organization may have policies on, respectful workplace policies.
Lisa, what about the fear factor? Because once
Yes.
again, we are facing harsh economic times, and the first thing that might go through a person's mind is, if I start taking this above my supervisor's head, it's going to have ramifications against me, and I may be in a position of losing my job because they'll start building a case against me.
Right.
How do you confront that fear?
And fear, it's normal. And you will be
So it's a
fearful,
given.
because you don't want to lose your job, especially if you're
But it
really
shouldn't
enjoying
stop
your job.
you.
It should not stop you, because my thought is, would you rather be fearful in that situation and allow that situation to push you to the point where you may consider suicide or
become ill.
homicide or become severely ill, or do you want to be proactive and begin to take control of your life? And if it means leaving the organization, then leave the organization. Yes, the economy is bad and jobs are few and far between, but the main thing is the person's mental health. If you are not well to do the job that you have now, you won't be well in a few months if you continue to allow the
Lisa, what
bullying.
Sam did to you was a bullying act.
Yes.
But it wasn't something that repeated itself over
Right.
time. It was a bullying act.
Right.
If you had to go back and do it all over again, would you do anything differently there?
With Sam, and it's important, what happened there was Sam displayed behavior that was violent,
Yes.
a violent tendency.
Yes.
Violence and workplace harassment are two different things. So I talk about Sam to let people know that sometimes there is a situation that comes about that allows the bullying to begin. So Sam represents violence in the workplace. Bullying is the day-to-day repetitive attitudes, behaviors that try to devalue a person. So the denials of promotions, the isolation, not being able to interact with
But it's
coworkers.
still all under bullying.
But it's under bullying.
But a different category of bullying.
There's two different types.
Yes, yes.
All right. So it's important to understand, and this is where sometimes people can't wrap their heads around
Right.
workplace bullying because they think of schoolyard bullying. But with the workplace bullying, it's more subtle. So the person's denied promotions, the person's not given the same opportunities as others. The person may be ridiculed, public performance reviews, things of that nature. And what these things do is they gradually eat away at the person. after
completely
time of
erodes
time.
that
Yes,
person.
Yes.
Now, Bill 168 is very important, and we see it as good news. It's in second reading, or it's past second reading, around that stage that you're saying, and we see it as positive news for Ontario. But am I correct in saying that if this bill does get passed in Ontario, chances are it'll start taking root in other provinces?